So as introduced, I'm Yasuhisa Ojima. I'm IMF resident representative for Cambodia. So I'm going to be a moderator for this panel session discussion. Then, probably, as you may know well, Cambodia is doing well in terms of the containment of the COVID-19 cases so far. The total number of confirmed cases just around 350, which is quite low, and no fatalities, which is very impressive, situation. So, but of course, Cambodia is, well connected with the world economy through trade channel, financial channel, remittance channel, and of course, others like commodity price channels. We have a, very open, economic system well connected with a global system. So that's why Cambodia is not immune to the global shock. So let me give you just a quick snapshot of global economy. As I am from IMF, so IMF provided global and regional economic outlook. So world economy this year is going to experience minus 4.4% contraction, which is the worst ever and basically since the Great Depression. Then of course, we are going to see the uneven recovery. We have, some early recovery from some big country like, China. And of course, US is showing some, better than the expected recovery in the second quarter and the third quarter. So we have a, mixed picture in the global economy. But when we take a look at the Cambodian economy, as I told you, Cambodia is well connected with the global system, firstly through the trade channel. So Cambodia's main exporting market is like EU, UK, US. Then as I told you, EU is now facing with the resurgence of COVID-19 spread. Then they are going to see some challenging environment. So of course, Central Bank of Europe will have some board meeting to discuss about their policy stance soon. So but of course, some possibility like investment. The major source of investment could be from China, and then China is recovering faster than expected. That is a bright spot. But of course, for ASEAN, regions, as I told you, ASEAN regions as well, we're connected to the global system. So that's why, also mixed picture within ASEAN, like Thailand, Philippines, they are experiencing very, big contraction this year. So Cambodia is somewhere in between. So Vietnam is better, So, but Cambodia is relatively, in between, but with some shock. So it's good to know what's going on in the Cambodian economy from the three aspects. We are going to discuss three topics today. First topic, what's going on in Cambodia to see the impact of this shock. So current situation of economy in Cambodia. That's the first topic. Second topic, what has done from the policy response, viewpoints. And then, of course, we can, how much we can expect from the policy response. That's going to be a second topic. Then the third topic is about the path to recovery. How we can expect the Cambodia, to be recovered. In which way, in what, sense. So those three are going to be key topics of our panel discussion today. So, and of course, I'd like to, start by, first topic under, current situation of economy. So, as introduced, there are 5 distinguished panelists from public sector and the private sector. But I'd like to ask, so I'd like to ask the, comment first, Mr. Phupum from the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Is it Phupum, is it okay? Can you make a comment on the topic 1? Okay, if something wrong, okay, I can start with Vuthy from the National Bank of Cambodia on the topic 1. Then I will ask the Phupum to come back. It's okay, Vuthy?
Yes, that's good. Thank you very much, Ojima-san. Good morning, everyone. It is my great pleasure to share my view on the state of the economy especially we are exposed to this negative shock. It is much bigger than 2008, and then since the Great Depression, this is quite a big one. So Cambodian economy is not immune, as you mentioned, to the external shock, as our economy is very open, very liberal. So I would like to touch on the shock that the banking sector received from this crisis, health crisis. I'm sure that Dr. Hutpum, my brother, would touch on the overall state of the economy. For the banking sector, we are not immune neither. We receive pressure from the fall of key sectors such as tourism, construction, even exports. Even though we have positive export, but our key driver of export, namely export of textile products, have declined. So this is also one of the main factors that bring down the economic growth. So our banking system, like we are a shock, somehow we can call shock absorber. We try to minimize the impacts, and we also try to maintain the business continuity. So what we have done, maybe I can, this is the second topic, or I can start elaborating this one.
Okay, so maybe, yeah, let's focus on the topic one.
The topic one. So the overall economy, I think we experienced a large drop of tourism sector. Yes, especially the international tourists. But at the same time, we have domestic tourists, Cambodian tourists, especially that now they cannot go to abroad, so they reach out many places in Cambodia. So it helped partly to boost consumption, to use the hotel services, restaurants. So it helped, but not the size is not equivalent to the international tourist for sure. So the main factor we have hit. Second one, as the international income, the main trading partner income declined. So they also bought our products less than before. So our export of textile also declined. The third thing that is also our main pillar is construction. Construction in Cambodia have been supported so far partly by the foreign demand. So when the foreign income decrease, it also impact our sector. But so far, this sector, we can call it decelerate, but not face a big decline. So we can, I think we feel that the risk is there, but can be controlled, is under control. So with this, the banking sector also got the pressure from the moderation of growth, and then we have introduced some measures that I will elaborate later. But the overall banking sector health is good, I can say, and resilient. The asset of banking sector is still growing. Credit is still growing to support the economy. Deposit is still growing. The risk in terms of NPL, a non-performing loan, is still low, even though it is slightly increased, but it's still low, lower than 3% for banks and lower than 2% for microfinance.
Thank you. Thank you, Vuthy, for the comments. Okay, so the Vuthy made a comments mainly on the impact on the financial sector. I think it is good to ask Manu, because Manu, he's a CEO of a wing, specialized banks. Yeah, I think it's good to ask him for the comments on the impact of financial sector. Manu, please.
Yeah, good morning, Excellencies, Ojima-san, and other respected panelists, and ladies and gentlemen who are watching this. From Cambodia Chamber of Commerce, we would like to look at it in a different way. We we've been badly affected, but not on the health side. We've been fortunate, but we have not been affected on the health side, but we've been affected on the economic side. It is bound to happen because we as an economy is dependent on the fortunes of many other economies. And when those economies are so badly and severely affected and going through for such a long duration of lockdowns, it's bound to affect us also. And we are also dependent on tourism sector, which has been a driving force behind the economic growth that we have witnessed in the past. So that has severely affected us. Services sector has got affected. But we also see that as an opportunity to relook at and introspect and relook at our export portfolio, relook at growth areas for us, relook at the dependence or over-dependence that we have had on certain geographic locations. We've seen agriculture being a saving force. I mean, we've seen growth in rice exports in the first half, and now we are seeing growth in non-rice exports, so more higher value items growing at about close to 50%. So these are the brighter side of the economic impact that Cambodia has witnessed. But all praise to the timely intervention by the different department, ministries, regulators, government in timely mitigation of the potential impact that could have been there, which could have been worse. So look at the distress funds that were distributed. Look at the policies that were brought in for financial institutions. Look at the, even after 2008, the policies by NBC in making sure that the financial institutions stay healthy and has been diligently monitored and regulated. So that is also one of the reasons why the financial institutions, in spite of all this, is still holding healthy. The liquidity ratios are good, the solvency ratios are good. As Excellency said, the NPL, though it has marginally increased, which is bound to happen, is still way within the controls. So that has been a commendable job that was done. So we would rather look at it positively by saying, as a country, we have been extremely resilient in the face of such economic adversity.
Thank you, Manu. And now, of course, and Vuthy also mentioned the impact on the trade. We have a panelist from the Ministry of Commerce. Pronunciation of his name. Sorry, Menghong, right? So, are you ready, Menghong? Can you make a comment on the impact, especially for the trade sector? So, as I understand, you are from Ministry of Commerce. Menghong, are you ready? You are connected. Can you say something? Especially for the trade sector. So, as I understand, you are from Ministry of Commerce. Menghong, are you ready? You are connected. Can you say something? Oh, Steve. Especially for the trade sector. So, as I understand.
Hello, can you hear me?
Menghong, are you ready? You are connected. Can you say?
I think there is a delay, so I think
Okay.
you have to be patient a little bit, okay?
Please.
Hello?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Ojima-san, for related to the Cambodian export, because I'm here on behalf of the Ministry of Commerce, and we just talk about some data that I got from my colleagues related to the import and export of Cambodia. And according to the data that I got from the General Department of Customs and Excise Cambodia, for the first 12 months of 2020, the amount of export and import are almost the same, which is around 13 billion US dollar. So the volume of the trade is 26 billion US dollar. Compare this data to the first 10 months of 2010, we can see that there is an around of 10% drop of trade volume, which is from around 29 billion to 26 billion. But if we look at the number of export, it seems there's like a estimate of around 6% of increase from the previous year. And for the top 5 exporting country that Cambodia export to, for the first 10 months, we have USA still remain our top #1 exporter destination with around of 3.8 million US dollar, which is an 5% increase from the 3.6 million in the same 10 months in 2019. And then the second top exporter is Japan with around 776 million US dollar, followed by Germany 670 million, and China 741 million, and lastly the top 5 is the UK, which is 627 million US dollar. And I just want to note that, here, even though we are facing this pandemic, the number of export to USA still increased by about 5%. And I just want to note also that some of the major export products that we do export from Cambodia include garment and textile product, food, meal rice, and bicycle. As for the importing, Cambodia import a lot from China. For the first 10 months of 2020, we import around 5 million of products from China, and this number decreased around 20% drop if we compare to the 2019. And then the second country that we import the most is Thailand with a volume of around 2.1 million, followed by Vietnam 1.9 million, and Taiwan around 543 million. And some of the major products that we import into Cambodia, as mentioned by some of our speakers or panelists already, it seems that we import a lot of raw material for the garment sector, vehicle, oil, construction material, and daily consumption. So overall, looking at the data, we can see that the total export and import are almost the same, which is around 13 billion. So our trade volume is around 26 billion, compare the first 10 months of 2020 to the first 10 months of 2019. And I think this number reflects that Cambodia has been performing well, even though we are facing this COVID-19 pandemic. That's all from me here.
Thank you.
And I think there might be some delay, so you have to be a little bit patient.
Yeah, thank you very much for the comments on the trade. Yeah, it was a bit, good news for Cambodia. The total number, export, import, they're almost the same as previous year. So that is, good news. But probably we need to see the composition of the, for instance, exports. So if you have a lot of export of gold, which will not be a usual case. Probably, we may need to take a closer look. But good news, we have similar number total export and import. Okay, so let me ask the Vathana if you have some more additional comments on the impact on the economy.
Well, thank you so much, Ojima-san, and it's my pleasure to join this distinguished panelist. My comment basically on the real economy. I think, as earlier speaker mentioned, I think this year we will see a contraction in the gross domestic product. Even though I think that all stakeholders have, I think, contributed to addressing the issues, but the impacts, especially since Cambodia is relying significantly on external demands, I think the impact is no exception with other countries. In terms of sector, I think tourism is probably the hardest hit, followed by manufacturing, garment, and textiles, also constructions. Agriculture is probably the least, but I think the growth it remains kind of like slow, in the sense that it can absorb but not the whole impacts of the this COVID pandemic. I think in just one more comment in terms of I think the real sector, especially on the informal economy, I think firstly we need to know more about the impacts. And I think that the fact that a large chunk of the economy is comprised of informal transaction, I think the impacts will also be significant as well. So moving forward, what we need to do is to understand more of that and how the impacts, both from household and individuals and from small and medium enterprise as well. I think that's another areas that we need to keep close monitoring on.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. Yeah, that's also important, issue. We need to, take a closer look at the impact on the informal sector. So, because I understand that from the labor structure, you have lots of, informal laborers. Okay, thank you very much for the comments. Okay, so let me ask the Hupum on the, comments on the impact. But at the same time, I'll ask him to start with the policy response because he's from the Ministry of Economy and Finance, And Hupun, are you ready to make a comments both on the topic 1, impact on economy, at the same time, policy response? Is it okay, Hupun, to make a comments on the 2 topics? Maybe we have some time lag, right? Hupun, can you make a comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ready.
Okay, please,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm ready for my intervention, Ojima-san. So thank you very much for providing me the opportunity. I think allow me to focus more on the policy responses because our previous panelists have already highlighted very well about the impact of the pandemics on the real economy as well as the financial sectors. So what we have done so far in terms of policy responses, I think all of us have already been fully aware that we try to figure out all the sectors, real sector as well as financial sectors, what kind of sectors, subsectors, and some other related issue which are really impacted, hard hit by the pandemics, and then try to see their status, what kind of the problem, the challenges, and how can we fix all these problems. As a policymaker in general, what we do, we try to understand the issue, and then we try to have a lot of consultation with the private sectors, with other key stakeholders, business people, professional, as well as some international organizations like IMF or World Bank, ADB, as well as our other policymakers, like for example from the National Bank of Cambodia, and then we try to understand the issue and what kind of responses should be issued by the government as a whole, by all the policymakers, in order to settle the problem. So what we have done so far to fix the problem during the difficult time. So the government tried to provide, I can say, fiscal assistance and a non-fiscal assistance to the business people. So the idea that the general or the royal government of Cambodia tried to do is to make sure that the business is going to be we know that it's a hard hit, but make sure that business have to be afloat, and at the same time, the most vulnerable people continue to survive, even they are facing more difficult time, more difficulty compared to the previous one. And then, what kind of resources available that the government can use to that one, because it is very important. I think from the overall point of view, most people understand very clearly about the issue, about the impact and the consequences of the pandemics. But the response is from country to country because of the resources available. So in this case, what the government of Cambodia tried to do is to see how much available in terms of resources and how much can we do, and how serious is the problem. So to be a little bit in detail, for example, in the garment, textile, footwear, travel product, and bag, and in the tourism sectors, the government tried to provide some kind of exemption. So, for example, for a specific period of time, the business people and some other related people are not required to pay the national social security. The government tried to provide financial assistance to the worker or employee in the sector hit by the pandemic. For example, in the garment sector, in the tourism, the hotel, in the restaurant, the government provide $40 per month per worker during that specific of the time. But I can say like starting from March or April until the end of this year, the government continue to provide this kind of financial assistance. In terms of other burden to be released, the government also provides some kind of exemption. So, for example, the hotel, the guest house, the restaurant, and the travel agency, they are not required to pay the monthly taxes to the General Department of Taxation. And the government tried to provide at the same time the training to the worker hit by the pandemics. I mean, hard hit by the pandemics. Make sure that they can have another skill to adapt to the new normal. But I can say all this kind of training activity have not been well organized because the impact of the COVID-19 is more serious. Especially we try to to follow with the health measure issued by the Ministry of Health about the social distancing. So not the physical training per se, but try to have some kind of online. In other a measure that the government tried to do, for example, you are not allowed to pay some curtain tax or the stamp duty or some others, license fee during that time. So this is what the government tried to do for the sector hit by the pandemics. Another issue that the government tried to do, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, about the most vulnerable people. So a kind of social assistance provided. So this mostly go to target people, the cash for work program, the social protection program, the cash transfer. So we provide in terms of cash to those people. Besides this, the government try to help the business people, especially in the financial sectors. So I think you also heard that the government have provide financial facility in terms of co-financing scheme created by. So the government have created the SME bank, and we have a special financing scheme. Work together with the Agricultural and Rural Development Bank, ARDB. We have the credit guarantee scheme, and we have some other program, to help the business people, especially to make sure that they still have the chance to get the loan from the bank. I think I would like to emphasize that Dr. Vuthy also highlighted at the beginning that the financial sector remains sound, and we don't have any problem with the liquidity. But for sure that the credit provider, they are more reluctant because people see about the risk. That is one reason that the government say we want to jump in and then try to have like a risk sharing mechanism that the commercial bank, the microfinance institution, as well as the government can work together in order to make sure that the business people hit by the pandemics can still have the access to their loan, and maybe the loan with a better condition. So these are mostly the part that the government have to do. And beside this, I mean, non-financial, non-fiscal, responses that can have to do. The government try to have to ease a better business environment. For example, we have created the IT platform. It's one of the single platform to allow the business people to register their business in a very quick and timely manners, and so they can have a good cut in terms of time and in terms of cost. So is our IT business registration platform can help a lot. So this is how the government have responded during I can say the whole year of 2020. Thank you so much, Ojima-san and the panelists.
Yeah, thank you very much, Futbum. That is a very, comprehensive explanation of the policy package. That is very, encouraging. So then, but anyway, so Vuthy he's also from the National Bank of Cambodia. Let me ask him about the policy response to especially for the financial sector. Vuthy?
Once again, I would like to elaborate about what NBC or banking sector have done facing these big challenges. So our main strategy policy of NBC is to maintain the stability, and then we contribute to restore, to activate economic growth, and then we are trying to promote our Khmer Real, and especially in these circumstances. So I would elaborate one by one. First, we try to maintain the stability. So what is that stability means to us? Stability means to us is first price stability. We try to promote price stability that contribute significantly to macroeconomic stability. So as you are aware of, our monetary policy is exchange rate anchor. So what we have done is to stabilize the exchange rate. And then it was to highlight that during the COVID-19 pandemic occurs, most of the regional currency depreciate, even Singapore US dollars, Malaysian ringgit, Thai baht, Myanmar currency, all depreciated. So we are trying to stabilize the exchange rate. So this year, we acknowledge that our currency is slightly depreciated, but relative to other regional currency, we are not the star, but relatively stable. So we can maintain our rate on average this year 4,090 real per US dollars, which is 1% in terms of depreciation, 1% of depreciation compared to previous year or 3 years, the past 3 year trends. So this is our main objective. So this stability of exchange rate together with maintaining the money supply, which is difficult part that we can control, but we try to control the credit growth, we try to control the liquidity in cash or in the economy. So together with this, we can maintain the inflation at around 3.8% this year on average. So less than 3%, which is good for the emerging and developing countries. So second stability is banking stability, and then can contribute, as you know, that 90% of financial asset is banking asset. So we try to maintain the stability of banking sector. So with this, can I go back to the first thing? We in terms of monetary policy, before going to the banking sector, we try to stabilize the exchange rate. What it is quite curious to ask what we have done so far. So we intervene, we inject Khmer Real according to the demand, we buy back Khmer Real from the market. So this is what we have done in a daily basis. We monitor closely the exchange rate. So one, it is warrant to auction to sell the US dollars, we do so. So once the market can manage the exchange rate, so we leave the market, we leave the exchange rate float. So this is our policy. So we try to manage, but we leave also the room to the exchange rate to float in order to absorb the shock. So second thing, we try to stabilize the banking sector. As Manu and Dr. Hout mentioned, we try to make the banking sector resilient, especially during these circumstances. So the risk is arising from the real sector. So what we are doing, we try to monitor the sector that exposed to the risk. namely real estate sector, NPL is part of it, the health of bank and financial institution, the liquidity of banking institution, the profitability of banking institution, and then the credit quality. So in terms of credit growth, as Dr. Hutbom mentioned, the bank is now reluctant to provide more credit. This is also rational because they have to manage their risk. At the same time, NBC try to encourage, but not to make them face a rising risk. We try to provide more liquid to banking sector by first, we maintain the liquidity ratio, coverage ratio, which is 100%. The liquidity ratio is the regulation that oblige bank to maintain liquid asset. So we don't increase, we maintain. Second thing, we reduce reserve requirement rate. Reserve requirement rate is the portion that bank, once they receive deposit, they have to put aside some portion at the central bank. So we reduce this in March, but effective from April. We reduce the reserve requirement rate on US dollar deposit from foreign currency deposit from 12.5% to 7%. So real from 8% to 7%. This, according to our study, provide bank and financial institution to have liquidity equivalent to nearly $2 billion in their hand to provide liquidity, to provide loan, to facilitate their operations. So this is first thing that we have done from April. Third thing, we try to maintain the implementation of capital conservative buffer. This buffer, this instrument is to have banks, financial institutions to have enough capital to face their risk. So we try not to increase this regulation. We try to implement 50% of capital conservative buffer so that bank could have their more capacity to absorb the loss. So the equivalent, their capacity increase in terms of 50% implementation of CCB is nearly $3 billion. So they have more liquid, they have more capacity to absorb shock, absorb loss. And then we're trying to monitor the real estate. Soon we would, with the kind support from Yasuhisa from IMF, we would have a property price index. We rather say residential price index because we cover part of the real estate sector. So we closely monitor this sector. We think that this sector could contain possible risk. We try to monitor through our interview, through our survey, and soon we have index that could be shared among regulators as well as real estate sector, those who are in the real estate sector. So third thing, we try to mitigate, we try to support the government policy in terms of supporting the poor. We have so far encouraged banks to do the restructuring loan. We observe the trend has been decreasing since September. I can say the total accounts that have been restructured so far is roughly 390 accounts, which 1,000 accounts. So and it's nearly 400,000 accounts, which is equivalent to $6 billion, which is not big in terms of total loans. And then from September, we saw the decreasing trend of this structured loan. It means that now people have been cautious, both in financial institution and client to acquire, to receive the loan. So bank, as Dr. Hunpun mentioned, is very cautious. Also, client is also very prudent before they submit their loan request. So we also try to maintain the confidence of the overall economy through accumulating our international reserve. It's happy to see that our international reserve increased this year 15%, while we have a balance of payment surplus only $500 million this year, roughly. We have increased our international reserve about $3 billion this year alone. So this growth, this high international reserve could maintain our policy effectiveness, and then could also maintain our exchange rate stable. In any case, I think we are able to do so.
Thank you, Vuthy. Yeah, so lots of policy instrument, But the good thing is to know the exchange rate has been very stable. Yeah. So actually, I'm also from the International Monetary Fund. So we are carefully watching what's going on, the external stability. So including the exchange rate, including the level of international reserves. The Cambodia looks very resilient, with the stability, But not only for the external stability, but also the financial sector, with lots of measures done by the NBC, providing the liquidity through the reduction of reserve requirement and also LPCO. That is a somehow technical term, but lots of measures to inject the liquidity. So it looks good, for the financial sector. So let me ask the Manu. So yeah, of course, Manu is from the specialized bank, So it's not full, commercial bank. But let me ask Manu if you have some comments on the policy response to the financial sector.
Okay. Thank you, Vincent. Over and above whatever excellencies have mentioned, I think it's also important to mention timely intervention with the e-commerce law, because there is a lot of effort, there is a lot of public-private sector engagements going on in trying to revive the economy or prepare ourselves for if there could be a worse shock, to prepare ourselves. So in that preparedness, the e-commerce law plays a very crucial role. It's for the first time that we will have a policy around or clarity around digital transactions, customer disputes. All these things lead to customer trust. So that's very crucial. If we want to leapfrog from where we are to a more digitalized, a more modern economy, this is an opportunity for that. If we were to do that, that law was very critical. So that's one good intervention. So I just want to mention one more from the Chamber of Commerce perspective. The bilateral trade agreement with China, I guess that also was fast-tracked and signed in October. That is going to be another huge opportunity for us to relook at our over-dependence on certain geographic regions for our economic growth. So those are important from our point of view.
Thank you very much for the comments. Looks like your comments had the elements of the path to recovery. Yeah, digitalization, e-commerce, it's all potential for Cambodian economy to make a recovery. So let me move to the topic 3, path to recovery, given that tight time frame. So then I know, Mr. Menghong, he's from the Ministry of Commerce, but he's been working for the e-commerce strategy issue. So that's going to be a potential, so as Manu commented. So let me move to the topic 3, and by asking the, Menghong to make a comment, especially on the e-commerce as a part of the past recovery, strategy for Cambodia. Is it ready? Menghong, can you make a comments on the topic 3 with your focus on e-commerce? Menghong, can you make a comments? Can you say something on your work on e-commerce? Or let me ask, Vathana, on your comments on the path to recovery. So what could be your elements for the path to recovery for Cambodia?
Okay, thank you so much. I think what earlier speakers have mentioned about, I think, a number of responsive measures to deal with this crisis. In terms of path to recovery, I think we might probably think in 3 different time frames: short terms, medium, and long term. And I will comment more on the real sector size but we have a bit on the financial sector, especially on the fintech side. I think short terms, I would probably give 2 points. I think the balance between the public health and the economic activity remains. I think Cambodia has been lucky that...
Sorry, can you hear me now? Yes.
Sorry, hang. Just
Yes,
moment. Okay, please, sorry. Yeah,
Ministry of Commerce recognized the trends, the rise and the essential of electronic commerce even before the COVID-19 started. This is why in the past few years we have been working rigorously in trying to set up the foundation for this sector by drafting the e-commerce law and regulation and strategy. We understand that the role of fintechs will be one of the essential players which cannot be ignored in facilitating the rapid growth of e-commerce. Let me briefly talk a little bit about the Cambodian e-commerce law, which was promulgated on the 2nd November of 2019. As Mr. Manu already mentioned that this law is really a milestone for the e-commerce sector. It was drafted under the initiative of Ministry of Commerce with cooperation with other ministries like Ministry of Post and Telecommunication, Ministry of Justice, National Bank of Cambodia, and Security Exchange Commission of Cambodia. In drafting this law, we used the unilateral model law on the e-commerce as the basis, and we also look at other international treaties, laws and agreements as the reference so that there's no contradiction. And in this law, there are 12 chapters with 67 articles. And the three main objectives of the law is to set the ground rule for regulating e-commerce sector. The second one is to govern all electronic commerce activity, both domestically and internationally. And the third one is to provide confidence to the public in using e-commerce. As you all know, that e-commerce has been on the rise in the past years, not just Cambodia, but all over the world. So by having this law promulgated, this is really a milestone. And besides the e-commerce law, we also have just finalized our e-commerce strategy, which was launched on 25th of November 2020. This strategy has identified 10 components or ecosystem that must work together to accelerate the e-commerce growth. And one of the components is the role of fintechs under the payment system chapter. So basically in the strategy, there's around 29 strategic objectives with 117 activities involving 18 ministries to be implemented. And each activity will be led by one ministry and supported by a few others in trying to realize it. And I just want to point out also that related to fintechs, some of the challenges that mentioned in the strategy are the limited awareness on the importance of multilateral connectivity, balancing between regulatory space to spur innovation and fintech expansion. And as mentioned also by the Deputy Governor in her speech, is that there are also some fragmentation of financial literacy initiative. And with this, the strategy also point out some activity that need to carry out so that we can improve all of this. And some of them is included enhancing participation into payment system infrastructure to promote interoperability. And law and regulatory are also the foundation, and we also need to speed up the process of trying to track all those laws. And hopefully by implementing all the activity in the strategy, we will be able to promote the adaptation and penetration of payment system and payment services. And then we can finally launch the payment system roadmap and FinTechs roadmap, and also address the problem of the digital literacy and and collaboration between the stakeholder become strengthened. I think those are the that we want to do at Ministry of Commerce related to the e-commerce. And at the same time, at the Ministry of Commerce, we also try to constantly open a new market by trying to negotiate with other countries, either through regionally or bilaterally. And another milestone that we have achieved this year is that we did negotiate, conclude, and virtually sign a bilateral trade agreement between Cambodia and China this year. And another regional FTA, which we also conclude, is the RCEP, or you can call it what a regional comprehensive economic partnership, which have 15 countries participate in it. 10 is the ASEAN plus 5 partners, including Japan, China, Republic of Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, which also signed virtually on the 25th of November 2020 during the ASEAN Summit. I think those are the policy response from the Ministry of Commerce related to the recovery one. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Ojima.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comments. Yeah, actually two important building blocks for the policy response as well as for the path to recovery, e-commerce and regional trade agreement. Thank you very much. So let me ask the Vathana to complete his comment.
So I think once again, I think recovery, pathway to recovery should rest on 3 principles. I think relief is still relevant, recovery and resilience. And I think in the short terms, what the government has been doing, especially on the fiscal side, I think continued cash transfer is still relevant, at least for 2021. And that's include both conditional and unconditional. Conditional in the sense that for the most vulnerable group who are able to work certain types, like Dr. Hutpum mentioned about cash for work or food programs. I think that should continue at least for 2021. For medium and long term, I think the number of both fiscal and structural issues that we probably need to deal with. The structural one, I think, is the diversification and competitiveness moving forward. Of course, if we link to that, education and skills will be continue to be relevant to recover the economy and also to make the recovery more resilient too. Also, I refer back to my earlier comments on informal sectors. I think this will be a big one of the big ticket agendas for the recovery process. Number one is to actually incorporate those into the formal economy and to know actually where they are, because I think one of the difficulty during these measures is to identify where they are, the affected ones. So I think moving forward, formalizing the informal economy will be one of the big ticket agenda. My last point is on productivities, and I think this is also be a long-term strategy for us as well, especially for resilience. And not only labor and capital productivity, I think we should be looking at total factor productivity, basically incorporating institutional productivity too, public and private. And I think the Ministry of Economy and Finance is working on that, especially the Cambodia Productivity Committee is drafting a framework on that. So I think it's important that moving forward, TFP, or total factor productivity, is enhanced. A bit on FinTech, I think for textbook economics is that technology is important. And I think the role of FinTech is for sure important, and the force is not only in Cambodia but globally. So I think that we need to embrace that. And two things with FinTechs is that education and skill again. And number two, I think we should be looking closely with technologies and human, because there's a lot of debate on technology replacing humans, which can lead to mass unemployment. So I think the term inclusive of finance or financial inclusions should be the key moving forward, making sure that most, if not all, of the population is included in their transactions, so that we can make sure that it's as inclusive as possible. So that's my comments.
Thank you very much. It's a very important, comments, especially on the productivity and innovation, and also the role of fintech. Then those are all, suggestive, comments. So let me ask Vuthy to make a comment on the past recovery by focusing on the role of fintech or financial sector.
NBC have so far supported fintech. We try to promote innovation. We ourselves also modernize payment system. So my boss, Excellency Chiesrai, she's the main advocate of fintech. She is the one who drives the payment system modernization. So let me mention some of things she has done. She has also very well elaborated to the public about what NBC have done. So NBC so far, we try to promote access to finance. According to FinScope 2015, Cambodia have 59% of adult population having access to financial services. So our objective in 2025 is to promote from 59 to 70, which is the reasonable level for emerging economy or developing country like us. So we try to promote not only access, but facilitate to provide financial service. We try to promote operability of financial service provided by different financial institutions or payment service providers. So we are supporting the e-commerce, e-government, which is now considered one of the main driver of economic recovery and the future of economic growth as well, source of economic growth. So what we have done, we have modernized our mainly 5 instruments that in our capacity. First, NBC have modernized the national clearing system to make it easy, faster, and safe. Second, we launched our fast payment to reduce the cost of transfer that could be used among the banks and financial institutions. Third thing, we try to promote to put in place the Cambodian share switch. Cambodian share switch is a system that allows client using different bank to make the operation with other banks. At the moment with some small cost, but in the future I believe we could reduce the cost. Third thing, we put in place what we call online banking system, which facilitate all the operation of government operation of bank operation. They can check their balance online. They can transfer their money among the system. So it's easy. No fee for government agency, but have small fee for banks and financial institutions. The last thing recently we have launched is Bakong. Bakong is backbone payment system. I believe that my boss has clearly mentioned about this. This is the system that use blockchain technology. So we are among the first central bank that use this technology. So what is Bakong? Bakong is the service that could connect among the financial institution service provider. So whenever you use one service of an institution payment system, for example, you cannot at the moment, they're limited to transfer from one institution to another. But Bakong could link all these service provider, and then they can use Bakong as an intermediary, and then to transfer to other service provider. So what we have done in terms of our instrument. And then at the same time, we support the innovation and FinTech through different channels. So we now, you can see that we have internet banking, we have mobile banking, we have QR code. So Bakong is one of the instrument that could, based on the QR code payment. We have connect the payment system with cross-border trade, like cross-border partner, like Thailand. Now, in the future, it would be accessible to larger public. Now we can transfer the money from Cambodia with Cambodian account to Thailand. So in terms of remittance transfer, this facilitates a lot. And now this system facilitates the cross-border payment. And then we would expand this cross-border facility to other countries like Malaysia, and then there are some more countries to come. So this is the main thing that we have done. So far we have observed a good progress, which is that the mobile banking is very popular in Cambodia. The amount of this operation during the 7 months of 2020 is 22 billion US dollars, which is equal 4 times of internet banking, higher 2-3 times than a credit card. So we have proposed also credit card payment. So I think in the future, mobile banking that we have promoted would serve a very important payment system to facilitate e-commerce, especially SME, to make SME more formal by using our system. So the data and all can be captured in a formal way. So we have observed a good move in terms of QR code payment. Now the QR code payment amount is only 30 million US dollars, but we believe in the next 2-3 years it would multiply by many times. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Vuthy. Yeah, lots of meat and on the plates. I mean, so it's going to be a big potential for Cambodia. Anyway, we have a good foundation with higher access to finance, and now Bakong could be a symbol of a national backbone payment system. So let me ask Manu for the comments, and because he's from the wing, it's a very specialized bank on the payment system. Please.
Thank you, Ojima-san. Cambodia has its own unique story of mobile financial services and financial inclusion. In 2009, when Bing was started by NBC and ANZ Royal to drive financial inclusion using mobile financial services, we had single-digit percentage on population of accounts, bank accounts, formal bank accounts in Cambodia. Now, on the Wing network alone, we have about 11 million mobile numbers, unique mobile numbers that transact every year. So Cambodia is right up there. If you look around the world to see the countries that use mobile financial services to drive financial inclusion, we'll be right up there in top 3 or top 5. So that has its own unique story. But we also learned some things over the past 12 years. So when we initially started, we wanted the unbanked people to behave like banked people. So it failed. So so what Cambodia did was Cambodia improvised and went for an aided digital transaction model, where you have the agents who are present everywhere across the country, every single commune, every single district, who will do the digital transaction on behalf of the customer. It is still a digital transaction. You still identify with your mobile number. You still capture all the information and data that you require to drive the financial inclusion in the country. But it is a more humane approach. It's just like my fellow panelists mentioned, it is financial inclusion as well as humane inclusion. So I have no doubt that FinTech will be right at the center of driving the digitalization of the country into 2021. And even when we are trying to put together measures in place to come out of the pandemic and to be more resilient, we are going to be seeing fintech at the middle of everything, driving m-commerce, driving e-commerce, driving digitalization, and giving the last mile fulfillment to all these plans and policies that we are putting together as a group from public and private sector.
Thank you for the comments. So let me ask the Phupum if you have additional comments on the path to recovery, because MEF is working on the recovery strategy. So I know you are working on that. So do you have some comments? But given that very limited time frame, so if you can make a comment within 3 minutes, if you have. Sorry, Phupum. Do you have some final comments on the path to recovery based on your work on the recovery strategy?
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Ojima-san. Yeah, I think my colleague Vathana and Dr. Vuthy and Mr. Manu have already well highlighted all what the government have done, and then what kind of time frame and the policy responses for the past to recovery. I think it is really well mentioned. So I just want to highlight, because of the time limited, to explain what is the concept and the framework that the government is doing in order to prepare the recovery plan. So from the point of view of the policymakers, they try to look at the status of the economy. For instance, to kickstart with how to maintain the economic stability, well highlighted by Dr. Vuthy, especially on the financial sector, but the same thing for the real economy. So within how to maintain the economic stability, so the government tried to keep fighting against the pandemics, try to maintain the business activity, business as usual, and at the same time, how to maintain the stability of the livelihood of the population, of the people in general, especially for the vulnerable people. And then moving forward, we try to see about in the medium and longer term. I think Vathana have well highlighted about what kind of thing we need to do in terms of diversification and try to increase our competitiveness, especially how to have our Cambodian brand, for example, made in Cambodia. Can the product made in Cambodia will be competitive at the international market? And last important point is the thing that the government continue to do it is the structural reform. So in short, we try to fix the problem and then try to make things recovered, and then how to move forward with the reform. So reform can be in the medium term, longer term, and then the thing that we need to do, what Vathana has mentioned about productivity, the skill, what can we do, all these kind of things. So with this kind of framework, and then together with the tool available, so what can we do in terms of fiscal policy? What can we do in terms of monetary policy from the National Bank of Cambodia? And then what kind of structural policy that we can do? So this is the general concept that we try to do in order to fix the economy, and then to move forward for, you can say, like the post-COVID-19 economy recovery, whether the economy performance will be as good as before, and then maybe the V-shape, really a V-shape or the U-shape, or how can we move forward from, especially by the year to come, 2021, 2022. Please allow me to highlight a little bit about the role of the Fintechs, because of one of the topics that we are talking today. So from the government side, the Fintech is one of the important things, because it's one of the new technology. And then as we are going to draft our digitalization, digital economy, so one of the key point that we observe that Fintech can be one of the new key driver to support and to facilitate the path to the recovery in the near future. So, but by saying that, we still need to challenge to tackle some challenges that we face by the Fintech, or especially by the technology and digitalization. how to have a full awareness of the most user, how to increase the skill, how can we fill the gap, how can we use the gap between Cambodia and the rest of the world in terms of technology, in terms of digitalization. That is the point that we need to do. So I think still a long way to go for a very good preparation for the path to recovery, but with a strong, conviction, with the good understanding of the current status of the economy, with the resources available, with the policy that we have. I think that we are going to move our economy to a path of recovery and make sure that when the pandemic subside, the economy performance will be recovered, hopefully as good as before the pandemics, and maybe we can do better. Why I can say we have a good hope that the economy will be better, because the pandemic have taught us a lot of lessons, especially about the preparedness, make us to understand about the informal sectors, about the what not have mentioned about this one. So we really have a good understanding when we want to intervene to assist all the businesses which are in the informal sector. Is very challenging because we have no complete information about them. So this is one of the challenges that we learn from the pandemics. So with all the lessons that we learn from the pandemics, that make us have a better understanding, make us have more time to think about what should be the most effective policy responses, about the policy tool that we have given our limited resources. So I think I'm very optimistic that this will help us a lot, and we will become stronger. We will become more resilient in the future. Because of our preparation, our joint effort, because our a good collaboration and cooperation between all the policymakers, especially the twin policymaker of the government and the central bank. So thank you so much, Ojima-san and the panelists.
Thank you, the comments. Yeah, thank you very much for the panelists for all the comments. So for the path to recovery, yeah, it's a rocky, road. But probably, Cambodia, yeah, looks like, real shock is so far maintained, contained. It's very difficult to say, but we have a real shock. So in the short term, we need to protect the, vulnerability. So, and including the, informal people as much as possible. You have an ID poor mechanism. So you have lots of, existing mechanisms. So in short term, we need to maintain some stability, including the protection of, the vulnerable people. So, but of course, in the medium term, of course, the Cambodian economy needs to be more resilient. We can be stronger. If we can, recognize the role of FinTech anyway, so we can raise, productivity. Of course, with COVID or post-COVID, probably, yeah, we need to use more in FinTech, cashless, transaction digitalization. Those are going to be all important, potential for Cambodia to take a, recovery, path. Thank you very much for the comments and also your discussion. I hope that all the discussion are, thought-provoking for the listeners. Thank you very much for listening and to watching us. Thank you very much.